Imagine a system engineered to measure inputs down to the drop, only to let the final product spill out onto the floor. In Kentucky, earning a cosmetology license demands absolute precision. By law, a student must complete exactly 1,500 instructional hours to qualify for professional licensure. This chart apportions that 1,500-hour block, mandating specific minimums for general sciences, hair care, skin care, and Kentucky law. But these mandates exist in a vacuum. With zero regulatory guidance, the document proving this education occurred, the transcript, dissolves into chaos. Mandating a highly specific curriculum without standardizing the evidence of that curriculum creates a void. It renders the entire educational framework legally invisible the moment a student graduates. This flaw is rooted directly in the text of administrative law. The industry is governed by Kentucky Revised Statutes Chapter 317A and Title 201, Chapter 12 of the Kentucky Administrative Regulations. These regulations explicitly require proprietary cosmetology schools to maintain daily attendance logs and records of practical work performed on the clinic floor. This creates an implicitly required trap. Schools are legally obligated to send an aggregate monthly count of hours to the state board. However, the law never defines a comprehensive academic transcript for the student to keep. This comparison matrix illustrates the disparity. The K-12 and university systems are driven by defined state data portals, like e-transcripts, and strict regional accreditation norms. Cosmetology, by contrast, relies on undefined administrative regulations and subjective board inspections. Because state law regulates the mere existence of records rather than their structure, the proprietary vocational sector operates within a massive policy gap. There is a common administrative assumption that federal privacy laws automatically guarantee the quality of a student's academic record. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, serves a specific legal function. It guarantees a student's right to access existing records and protects their personal privacy. This flowchart maps the distinction. Under FERPA, a student might receive a disorganized box of logs, not a standardized transcript. The law dictates access, not creation. FERPA amends inaccurate records, but offers no remedy for unstructured ones. They pass compliance despite lacking crucial out-of-state transfer data. Relying on federal privacy laws to dictate state-level document structure is a misreading of the law. It leaves students entirely unprotected from sloppy record-keeping. This missing legal element creates a system of regulatory deference, directly impacting proprietary schools that operate under a bare minimum rule environment, meaning they seek to meet baseline state standards to remain financially viable. Consider Regulation 201 KAR 1250. It demands that a school keep a detailed record of enrollments and withdrawals, but the state has never defined what detailed actually entails. In 2024, the state's Legislative Oversight and Investigations Committee, or LOIC, published a report revealing the consequences. They found that state inspection forms provide only a basic, subjective checklist. This causes severe operational confusion. One inspector might walk into a school and accept a digital dashboard of hours, while another inspector demands handwritten paper logs to satisfy the exact same statutory requirement. To protect themselves, schools hoard redundant, non-essential paperwork. They aren't following a standard. They are simply guessing what will satisfy the preferences of the next random inspector. Without a standardized document baseline, schools are forced into an environment of regulatory fear, burning administrative resources on guesswork rather than operational efficiency. For the individual student, this documentation gap is a direct threat to their livelihood. It creates the lost credit phenomenon. Schools are legally required to maintain student records for only 5 years after attendance. After that brief window, they are permitted to completely destroy them. If a professional decides to move, transferring a license to a state like California requires a highly specific proof of training, or POT. This document must detail exact curriculum hours across specific subjects. This diagram shows the friction. Kentucky's system outputs a single aggregate block labeled 1,500 hours. When a student attempts to plug that into California's complex, multi-slotted destination requirements, the transfer fails. students are frequently forced to return to their former schools, some of which have already permanently closed, begging administrators to handcraft curriculum breakdowns that were never standardized in the first place. Issuing a non-standardized transcript effectively places an expiration date on a student's education, permanently crippling their professional mobility the moment the raw data is destroyed. Finally, this ambiguity legally targets the Kentucky Board of Cosmetology itself and its enforcement authority. The LOIC investigation identified a critical failure. 46% of the board's disciplinary files were missing the actual inspection sheets that proved a violation occurred. This exposes a rubber stamp vulnerability. The board frequently votes to fine schools based on written summaries of violations, completely lacking the standardized documentary proof to back those summaries up. In administrative law, there is a doctrine known as void for vagueness. It prevents the government from enforcing laws that are so unclear that a reasonable person cannot understand what is required. Finding a school for maintaining improper records without ever legally publishing a standardized schema for a proper record explicitly exceeds the board's promulgated authority. Failing to design a standard transcript leaves the board's enforcement actions without a clear evidentiary baseline, stripping the agency of its ability to defend disciplinary fines in court. The necessary completion to this legal framework is to write the missing rule, a law that defines and mandates a certified student transcript. This is not a new data collection burden. Schools already track and report this data to the state on a monthly basis. The law simply mandates how to format that existing output. Here is a proposed schema for that official document. It begins with the temporal and identification data layer, locking in exact enrollment dates, withdrawal dates, and unique student permit numbers. The next layer is the curriculum matrix. This grid breaks down the total hours, specifically separating theory instruction from practical application for each distinct curriculum category. The final layer verifies specific task competencies, mapping out completed minimum tasks, and provides a dedicated sign-off box proving the mandated 40 hours of Kentucky law instruction. Implementing this schema shifts the state from regulatory deference to regulatory design, protects inspectors from accusations of bias, shields schools from arbitrary fines, and secures the students' hours. This policy reform is an urgent economic necessity, aligning perfectly with the Kentucky General Assembly's current focus on workforce efficiency. The momentum is already building. In 2025, the legislature passed Senate Bill 22, successfully removing testing bottlenecks and eliminating penalties for unlimited exam retakes. This timeline shows the looming pressures rapidly approaching. Following the 2025 reforms, 2026 brings a cluster of critical milestones, including the shift to biennial license renewals, transparency portals, and the launch of the Interstate Licensure Compact. That 2026 licensure compact will categorically fail in Kentucky. If professionals attempt to transfer their licenses state to state without standardized proof of training documents, the cross-border data transfer will be rejected. Defining this transcript is a low-cost regulatory optimization. It requires no massive infrastructure builds and no budget increases from the general fund. Formalizing the documentation of cosmetology education is the necessary final step. It ensures that every single hour earned by a Kentucky student is legally protected, universally recognized, and permanently portable.